Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our spotlight tonight. My name is Lisa Gear and I'm the Dean of Admissions. So pleased to see so many of you joining us. And we're going to have our admissions ambassador, Fabiola, will also be joining us tonight, and she'll be answering questions in the chat. Fabiola, do you want to say a quick hello?
Sure. Hey everyone, my name is Fabiola. I'm one of the admissions ambassadors. There's about 4 of us, I believe. And I'm here to answer any questions you have. I'll be in the chat. I'm a 2L, so I'll be around next year too. So just let me know if you need anything.
Thank you, Fabiola. Okay, so for the focus for tonight is the wonderful Mandi Brooksbank. She's a Scale alum, and she's going to spend a little bit of time with us tonight sharing her experience getting to law school, her time doing our accelerated 2-year program, and of course, the exciting things that she's been doing since. So I'll go ahead and turn it to Mandi. You can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you all. Thanks for coming today. My name's Mandi Brooksbank. I'm currently a director in the television business and legal affairs at Entertainment One here in Los Angeles. But I'll give you a brief history about how I kind of got to E1. So I'm originally from Reno, Nevada. I grew up there. It was a great place, but ended up coming to LA for undergrad. I went to the University of Southern California and was in their program that's called the Business for the Cinematic Arts program. It's a really unique program that is a joint program between their business and cinema school. So as an entertainment lawyer now, I always kind of knew that I wanted to be in entertainment, but I wasn't intending to be a lawyer when I first set out in the entertainment space. I initially thought I wanted to be a producer. And I had a really influential professor who kind of questioned me about what I wanted to do with my career in undergrad. And he was a manager, he's a talent manager. And for me, he said, you know, what do you want to do? I told him I wanted to be a producer, but he told me just based on how he saw me in class that I should really consider law school, which I thought was crazy. But I thought about it a little bit more. And at the time I had the opportunity to possibly graduate early. And so I made a decision that I would either go to law school because I found this really cool program at Southwestern Law that is known for entertainment. That's only 2 years, so I wouldn't waste any time. So I would either apply and go there, or I would continue on my producing path. So I feel like looking back, a little bit of a naive approach, I would say, but I got in and I ended up loving it. I'm a bit of a nerd and I find the law extremely interesting. But again, for me, it was always kind of a strong focus of mine to really end up in entertainment, which for some people, they find that out later in their path through law school. But it was helpful for me just kind of knowing that from the beginning when I got into law school. And so I did the Scale 2-year program, which was great because you get in, you get out. It's really intense, nonstop, but in my opinion, it prepared me a lot better for the bar because everything seemed so fresh in my mind that it was still obviously like, it's always dramatic studying for the bar, but you feel more confident because it's just like knowledge that you only a few semesters had been going over closely with your professors. So while I was at law school, I also was in a couple of great programs. I was in the Trial Advocacy Honors Program, which is basically like mock trial. It's a little bit like theater, which I liked to perform. And what else did I do? I was on law review. I was a Dean's Fellow. I also had a few externships. And those externships, one was with a law firm that did entertainment in addition to some other types of law. That was actually, it was called, I don't think they're still around, but it was Shirok Sheikh. He's at a different firm now, but he was working with a couple of his friends and they were all Southwestern alums. So that was a really great experience. And then my second externship was with a federal judge. And for me, I needed the experience more of showing on my resume that I like had the law experience because I already did a lot of entertainment before. So I wanted to show I was a real lawyer. So those were good experiences for me. And then after law school, my first job I got was at Creative Artists Agency, which is a talent agency in Los Angeles. And I worked in their general counsel's office for about 1.5 years. And that was interesting from a lawyer's perspective, I would say, because an agency is not necessarily like, there's a lot of lawyers at agencies, but it's not like the end all be all for an entertainment lawyer, I would say, but it's a really great place to learn the nature of the entertainment industry because agencies are just the hub. So it really shows you how the business works. So after that, though, I knew that I wanted to go to a law firm. I ended up going to this firm called Donaldson and Califf. It's a boutique entertainment firm that mostly represents independent film producers. I was there for like about 2.5 years. And then I've been at E1, which is in-house in TV. We strictly do TV in the department that I'm in. I've been here for a little bit over a year. So that's my path.
Wonderful. So I know you came into law school wanting to pursue entertainment, as many of our applicants do, because our program is so noteworthy. What I'm interested to hear from you, though, is, you know, at some point where you probably had to question that again. Is this still the thing that I want to do? So where was that moment for you, you know, in deciding that, yes, the thing that initially brought you did still, you know, capture your interest and you knew that was something you wanted to continue pursuing?
Yeah, that's a great question because when you're in law school, you're not really taking a ton of entertainment classes, right? You get a couple here or there, but you're ultimately learning all types of law so that you ultimately pass the bar. I enjoyed that because in a sense, it gave me a break from my obsession of entertainment to kind of learn about the different areas of law and give you just like a breadth of knowledge overall that you still use. Maybe not on the day-to-day, but there will be things that pop up every now and again. And I'm like, oh yes, I remember that from torts or con law or, you know, whatever. But for me, I think it was really just my passion for the entertainment field. I also have a lot of siblings who are very creative. I'm a very creative person. I've always been in love with like theater ever since I was little. And just knowing that that also was the type of business that really interested me. And I found that out through, number one, talking to a lot of entertainment attorneys or, you know, different executives in the industry who were happy to sit down with me as a law student and just tell me about their experiences. And then number two, I really did read a lot of books about the industry and the different types of things and what it would mean to be an entertainment attorney and the business surrounding the entertainment world, which was very beneficial. And I still found all of that to be exciting and interesting. And so that's ultimately how I knew that I wanted to continue on this path.
That's wonderful. Okay, so I want to take you back a little bit to before starting law school. Is there something that you felt like you experienced in your background, either professionally or in your education, that you thought really served you well in law school?
Probably my study habits, to be honest. You have to be really, you also have to like know that this is something that you want and you take it very seriously, right? It's not the same as undergrad where I know, you know, I wasn't really like a big partier in undergrad. And sometimes, you know, like you're like, oh, well, I'm trying to have a social life. But when you go to law school, like you have to be really serious about what you're doing. And it's still like a social environment enough where you make friends and you bond and your life is literally like you eat, breathe, sleep, and die law school. Like I remember, and I'm not trying to scare anybody about this, but and it's a short period of time, right? You get to the goal and you get over it. But I just remember like when I was in law school, my sister was saying, oh my gosh, you've become so boring. Like you never go out anymore. What's going on? And I was like, guys, I'm focusing. I'm going to do this. So you just have to like focus and know that what you're working towards is really going to be worth it when you get out on the other side.
Yes, you got to play the long game.
Totally.
Okay, so I know that you've had the opportunity, you know, through various employment, you know, opportunities, through your externships, your time in honors programs and, you know, things of that nature, where you've had, you know, the exposure to other professionals and, you know, really being able to kind of immerse yourself. How important would you say networking has been in your career transitions? And do you have, you know, a tip that you would share about how to make the most of those networking opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, networking is so important. I think everybody realizes that. It seems like kind of an annoying word too, but networking is really just about like making friends with people and like cultivating relationships. You would be surprised how excited most individuals are to talk about their career when anybody reaches out, like a law student or even a first or second year lawyer who is just looking to get a little bit more information. Generally, people are super open to that and they're willing to talk and they're happy to talk and they'll share a ton with you. And just keeping those relationships, I think, is always difficult, right? But you can do it in different ways by trying to get a lunch or coffee with them every couple of months. You can send follow-up emails about interesting articles or things that maybe you guys had talked about that reminded you of that person. Those are like small things, but it just keeps you on their radar. And then people do remember you. Like I have actually a really good example of that. So when I was trying to get my job at Donaldson and Califf at the time, I just knew I was ready to move on and wanted to go to a firm. And so I didn't have a lot of leads, but I would just send like emails to attorneys that I would look up and really admired through, you know, like the Hollywood Reporter's Most Powerful Lawyers. And Lisa Califf was one of the people on that list. And I saw that she is a Southwestern alumni. And so I was like, oh, that's great. She would be totally down to talk to me because we have something in common. And then I also saw that their firm represented live theater in Los Angeles. And I'm like a theater nerd. So I was like, oh, another fun thing that I can share with her. So when you find those commonalities, that's great. So I just reached out to her to get a coffee. I met with her. And then towards the end of like this, like, you know, just casual discussion, I let her know that I actually was looking for something and I didn't know if their firm was looking for anybody. At the time, they weren't looking for anyone. And I said, you know, that's fine, but it was still great to talk to you and, you know, we'll keep in touch. 2 months later, they started looking for somebody and she remembered me and she contacted me and asked if I was still looking and wanted to come in for an interview. And that's essentially how I got the job. But it's really, you just have to be like brave enough to put yourself out there and then be willing to have like those good personal conversations and kind of leave your mark on a person so that they keep you in mind.
Those are great tips. Okay, so there's some questions for you in the chat. I'm going to ask some of them.
Okay.
Folks can also raise your real hand and I will call on you, or you can use the raise hand feature in Zoom. So Ron asks, you know, he always imagined entertainment lawyers were agents. What other pathways can you pursue within the entertainment sort of lane?
There are so many, and I feel like I didn't even know until I finally got into like the real world of law and entertainment, just like how various and many different areas there are. And it can be overwhelming at first to try and even like pick a path because you eventually have to like narrow yourself down and follow that line. So there is like the agent lawyer route, that is a route. Other routes are lawyers will specifically specialize in production legal. There are specialties in both scripted and unscripted. Independent film is very different than studio film. Usually a niche firm will only represent like independent producers versus representing studio films. If you go in-house, that's completely different too, because now you're on the opposite side where you're negotiating specifically for the company. And you're usually negotiating against talent attorneys who only represent actors, writers, directors, what you think of when you think of like talent, right? So, and those lawyers do not, it's very rare if you're ever in a place where they represent both talent and do production legal because there's a lot of conflicts of interest there. So usually a lawyer will specialize in one or the other. And that's just like on the transactional side, right? And then we have lawyers who are doing litigation in entertainment. And those are people who, oh, and I forgot, there's also clearance, which is a whole nother special thing where you're reviewing films for copyright issues, right? Copyright, trademark, any personal rights, privacy issues. And a lot of times the production firms will also do clearance, but there's occasionally lawyers who just completely specialize in only clearance. And that's a fun world to be in as well. And then, yeah, on the litigation side, there are attorneys who, you know, something bad happens on the transactional side or after the movie comes out and you get sued. So you go to an attorney who specializes in copyright or contracts, or, you know, there's just so many different facets of even litigators who specialize in all these different areas, or even like back-end issues. There are attorneys who litigate things specifically related to like film finance, and then those will be the people who take you to court, which that doesn't happen a lot. I feel like, especially these days, most people are willing to try and settle things, or like they'll have a contract in place and that's great, but it's like, okay, well, what do we do practically? Because nobody wants to get to that level, but it does happen occasionally. So that's just like a taste of all the different areas.
Sounds like a whole sampler platter. Okay, so there's tons of questions here in the chat. I'm going to call on some folks to ask their questions live, or to elaborate if they would like to. So Nicole asked a question about opportunities to work in another big entertainment city. Do you feel like going to school in LA makes you feel stuck in LA?
I don't think it makes you feel stuck in LA, but I know that a lot of entertainment comes from LA. That's obviously changing, especially in this new remote world. I have friends who I know have literally moved to like anywhere else. Like even I have a friend who moved to New Mexico, who is an attorney, and he's still able to keep his job in LA. So I don't know. I would prefer to.
Yeah, that's a big area now where a lot of production is taking place. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think actually, in my opinion, people have different opinions about this, but I think having the degree or passing the bar in California actually carries more weight and makes it a little bit easier for you to get an entertainment job elsewhere, because the majority of entertainment contracts are either like governed by California law or New York law. And it seems like California is like a pretty strong hold. So you're not necessarily limited by going to school here. I think if anything, it actually gives you more of a leg up if you wanted to go to New York or Nashville or even Toronto. Just having like that core understanding of California law is very important.
Right. Okay. Who would anybody like to ask their question live and want to raise their hand? Alec, you're up.
So I currently work in the entertainment space in some capacity. So I wanted to know whether you had experience working in entertainment, like say in college or internships. And if you did, how would the knowledge that you accumulated from those positions affect the way that you either do your job now or just affect the way that you built your career in entertainment law?
Yeah, so nice to meet you. Thanks for the question. That was all beneficial for me, I think, in making my decision to continue on and do entertainment law. I didn't like necessarily work directly because I was still like an undergrad, but I did a lot of internships. I worked on a lot of student films while I was at USC, and it was always in the creative space. So I never really bridged the gap over to like the legal side of things until I started law school. But all of those were so beneficial because, as you probably know, there's a lot of like special lingo in entertainment that they don't use in any other business. And there's a lot of weird industry specific things where there will be even times where it's maybe not legally sound completely, but it's industry custom. So we're going to do it this way because this is how they've been doing it in the industry forever. And so it is a lot easier to jump into an entertainment law when you already have like the foundation of knowing the way people talk and the way people do business in the entertainment world. And especially as a lawyer, what makes your job easier is when you're able to communicate effectively with the creative people, right? Because you're essentially doing deals for them or helping their project become a reality and working within the bounds or trying to like make what they want to do. Like my thing is I never want to say no, right? So it's like if they come to me with an issue, I'm going to try to help them figure it out and still be legally, okay and not infringing on copyrights or whatnot. And it makes it a lot easier having that knowledge of the creative side to be able to talk to them and relate to them and speak to them in a way that they understand. And then, yeah, it just makes it easier. It's like an industry specialized thing.
Thank you. Thoroughly answered my question.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to combine a couple questions in the chat and then we'll go to Paulina after this. So there's a few questions talking about kind of what does your day-to-day work look like? How stressful, would you describe it as being? And of course, you only know what you know, but compared to, perhaps some of your classmates, if you could kind of walk people through kind of what that experience looks like on a day-to-day basis and how you deal with whatever stress that, comes along with it.
Yeah, I feel like, the stress question, like if you're going to law school, you probably already know that you can handle stress okay, right? Like most lawyers have semi-stressful jobs, if not very stressful jobs, but you do it in stride and you kind of like enjoy what you do and you get an excitement out of like the busyness. At least that's how I feel. And that's how I felt about Scale too. If anything, Scale prepared me, I think, a little bit better for the stress and the fast pace of the real world. But to answer your question about the day-to-day, so I do work in-house and I'm specifically represent television. I do a little bit of unscripted, but at E1, I'm mostly doing scripted shows. And there's really kind of like 3 buckets of things that I do. Every day is different. It's hard to say like exactly what I do every day because there's always like some issue that comes up that you have to like prioritize over everything else. But essentially the 3 buckets are, one is development, one is production, and the third one is agreements between like our studio as an independent studio with a network when we sell the show. So in the first bucket for development, we pre-negotiate all of our deals for above the line talent before we even allow them to put pen to paper, because we never want to be in a situation where we're selling a project and there's a lot of interest in it, and then all of a sudden we have no leverage because everybody's going to demand more money when something's attractive and multiple buyers are buying for the show. So we always pre-negotiate deals. This will be for the writers, the pilot directors, the non-writing producers, and the underlying rights. And so for those, what happens is the creative executives will come to business affairs and say, hey, there's this really great idea we have, or we found this really great writer who has this great idea that we want to develop into a TV show. Can you make a deal for him? So then I'll get on the phone with their agent or lawyer or manager, sometimes all 3, and we'll essentially like hash out the deal terms. There's usually like, there's certain things that are kind of standard in every deal. And then, you always get creative depending on what the person wants. So that's kind of the first bucket. And the second bucket, if we take that piece of development and it moves on and now it's sold to a network and everybody's really excited and we're greenlit to go to production, then I will continue on and negotiate all the above the line deals for everybody in the writer's room, all of the series regular actors, the department heads, line producer, all of that good stuff. So I'll negotiate those deals, I'll paper those deals, and then I'll continue on with the production. We usually hire outside counsel to do all the below the line deals and vendor agreements and clearance work. But I kind of stay on board and I oversee them. And then when any issues or questions arise, then I'm, involved and I handle those things. And that's pretty much production. And then the third bucket, the agreements between the studio and the network. So I guess that one should have gone before the production, but that's essentially when we sell a show, then I'll be involved with the negotiation between the network about how the relationship between E1 and the network will run. Sometimes they're co-producing agreements. More generally, at Entertainment One, we run our own productions. So we have our own production group who does all the groundwork for those productions. And so the studio's just kind of, the network is just kind of overseeing it. Yeah, so then I'll negotiate those deals and the terms and then paper those agreements.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we'll go to Paulina, then Kirby, then Magdalene. Paulina, do you want us to come back to you?
Oh,
you
can
got,
you hear me?
you got it? Yes.
Yes. I'm sorry, I couldn't figure it out before. So my question is about the program that you've chosen, the 2-year accelerated.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds very, tempting because the sooner we are lawyers, the better, because we can save the world sooner, right? But for someone like me, I would like to do externships and internships while I'm doing that. So would you say that it's doable? Would you recommend to go with the regular 3-year program if if you know that you're gonna, like, can you even combine it? That's the question. Can you even combine the externships and the accelerated 3-year program?
Got it.
You definitely can. I'll let Mandi talk about her specific experiences, but the program itself is designed for you to have a guaranteed externship in the last portion of the program. So they run on what we call periods, which is more like the quarter system. So in the last period of the program, you get a guaranteed externship, and then you can work with the externship office or others on campus to help you with your placements. And then if you look at the summer in between years 1 and year 2, there's one summer that's sandwiched in between there. And during that time, you can also do an additional externship. So it's possible in the 2 years to also have 2 externships, if that's something that you want to do, but you'll have at least one.
And
Yeah, I did exactly that.
Can I jump in for this one? Because I want to actually ask for your student perspective too. Like, how did you feel mentally? Did you think that it was too much or enough? Like, would you recommend it to another student to jump into something like that?
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's probably a personality thing, but for me, it was totally manageable. I did exactly what Lisa mentioned, where I did an externship for the second summer and then our final quarter. And to be honest, like, I've heard from a lot of lawyers and law students that they think the third year is a waste. So I mean, I can't like speak to that because I never, like, I only did 2 years, but they did feel full and jam-packed, but definitely manageable. I'm the type of person who kind of likes to just, like, move things along and get to the point and not drag things out. So it feels really efficient to do it in 2 years. And then, you have all the same ability to be able to do honors programs and to make good connections with people and to do those externships. So if anything, I don't know, everybody always tells me, they're like, you did it in 2 years. That's so smart. Oh, I wish I did it in 2 years.
Okay. So it is good. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure. Okay, Kirby, you're next.
Hi, Mandi. How are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
Good. So I have worked in costumes as an IATSE costume designer for 10 years now. And I am really interested in working for an agency that represents costume designers. And so just circling back to talking about deals being made for crew members who are above the line. In recent years, there has been a trend of costume designers being credited as producers on productions. Like Tom Broker is now a producer for Saturday Night Live, and Ryan Murphy has Lou Eyrick as his costume designer for all of his projects. And so Lou is now also a producer. And this is something that costume designers want to really make more of a trend and less of an anomaly. And so I just wanted to know if that's something that you yourself have come across, and if so, is it something that you've seen costumers being credited with as far as a producer?
Yeah, so that is a common trend. I think with a lot of different departments, like, people are always kind of vying for the producer credit. And I know that there's occasionally some clash between, like, producers who, like PGA producers who get that PGA little indication at the end in like movies and stuff like that. But it is a lot more common, especially if the costume designer is somebody probably like Ryan Murphy's costume designer, where he's been with him for like many shows and he's probably very instrumental in the development of the characters because costume is so important in that respect. And so I can see how they become producers. I think maybe on one of our shows, a costume designer has gotten the producer credit. And a lot of it does have to do with like the type of work that they're doing for the show, right? So if they go a little bit above what a traditional costume designer would do. So for example, like I'm assuming, I don't know, but Ryan Murphy's costume designer, his shows are like so intricate with all of the costumes, right? And they really do have more impact than just like what the person is wearing. And so he probably does help them develop things a little bit more and talk about like the design of the character or the world that they're in. And so when a costume designer is kind of elevated a little bit in their role, that's when you would see a producer credit being a little bit more available to them. And a lot of it also has to do with, they call them quotes. It's like if you got something on a previous show, on a previous deal, we're not, as like lawyers, we're not allowed to ask people for quotes, but if they want to provide them to us, and especially if it's like a costume designer who gets producer credit traditionally, they're going to let us know that like, hey, I always get this credit. Look at, you know, all these past quotes that I have where I received this credit. So therefore I need to get this on this deal. Then that's also the precedent that shows, and usually studios will end up agreeing to that because we're not going to like walk you back to a lower level, basically.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's really cool that you did that work though. Costume design.
Yeah, like it's a bit of a transition, but this is really what I intended to do in the first place. And then I kind of have the Elwood story of having a fashion merchandising degree and like working in the industry. And now I'm like, I'm gonna be a lawyer.
Great.
So yeah.
Well, good luck.
Thank you for your question, Kirby. Okay, so next will be Magdalene.
Hey, Mandy, nice to meet you. Hi. So I was curious, like, because I know there's like, they say like there's some jobs that are like stressful, like within the law field. Would you say this is stressful, or is it like more like fun, relaxing? I mean, everything's gonna be like work, but like, is it like, how does it feel?
I mean, I wouldn't call it like relaxing necessarily, but I find the work I do to be really fun. I think it's way more fun than a lot of types of law that you could be doing. Like, you know, like, I don't know. For me, litigation is like kind of boring, or civil procedure is like kind of boring. But I don't want to like, you know, knock on those people who do that kind of stuff. But entertainment is exciting. It's like you're working on projects that people are actually seeing, that's culturally relevant. And it's always changing. Like you never get bored. You never feel like a cog in a machine, because it's like there's so many things going on, and the technology and industry trends are just constantly changing that you have to like always be on it. So if anything, it's like really exciting. I definitely have like, you know, stressful days where I feel like I'm like doing too much and I feel overwhelmed, but and I think that's normal, obviously, especially when you're first starting out. That's just how it is. But you get to a point where you can manage it and you can balance it, and you can decide that you're not going to respond to every single email at 10 p.m. at night, because like it's just not humanly possible, and people understand that. And I think especially in 2021, like more modernly, people have families, and there are boundaries in place that others understand within the entertainment community. It is a culture of like people are working really hard and they're excited, and there is like a high expectation, but at the same time, it's definitely, you know, like you're not gonna kill yourself, and like your life won't be totally ruined. Like it'll be a good life. It's a fun life. There's a lot of fun events that you get involved in, and the people are super interesting. So if anything, it keeps you like on your toes, and I'm really excited.
Thank you.
Okay, next is going to be, is it Chanel?
Yes, it's Chanel. Hi, and hi, Mandy. So I work on, like I'm a paralegal at one of the big three, and I've been there for about 4 years now. And it's pretty much, I work in the legal division, so like I kind of would be assisting you in that sense. Do you think, like going in with what you know now and how every day's different and it's taught you a different set of law, like restraints of what you do you think it would have helped your law school experience and journey? Or, I mean, of course, all the experience does that, but like, do you think it would kind of be a lot to unpack? Because as you mentioned, there's some things that are kind of like not corporate law, litigation law, and things that you might see at a law firm as opposed to in the entertainment industry.
Mm-hmm. So sorry. So having known, can you ask the question again? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. No, like having known what you know now, working on the entertainment side, do you think it would have been a lot to unlearn, like unpack, in your law school journey?
Oh, I think I'd still do it probably. I think if anything, I'm happier with the result than I was expecting in law school. I've when I was first trying to go to law school, I did a lot of info interviews with attorneys, and many of them, I don't know if this is the same for other people, would always tell me, "Do not go to law school. You will ruin your life. Awful. Like, being a lawyer is the worst." And that like annoyed me kind of. And if anything, it made me like want to go to law school more to like prove them wrong. But I'm actually here to say that I like being a lawyer, and it's been really fulfilling for me. And it makes me feel like I have more of a say in a room. And even if I decided to be a producer, because a lot of what we do as lawyers in the entertainment field is a lot of like very similar work to what producers do. And if anything, you're guiding the producer more. So even if you chose to do something completely different, by having like the legal knowledge, it just gives you a higher level of understanding and respect. And like, I think that's really valued.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chanel. Okay, is it Seiran?
Yeah, how are you?
Good. How are you? You had a question.
Yeah, I'm really like enjoying this conversation because I'm in the middle of a business deal right now as we speak, and I'm dealing with some negotiation issues, you know.
Trying to get some free negotiations advice?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so on some level, you know, but I realize like how important the whole thing is, because if you're doing business out here or you're doing some type of business and you don't really know what's going on and you can't really understand the logistics of what's going on, you're definitely going to lose a lot of money. And I feel like that's where a lawyer comes in with an experience such as Mandi, who is going to equalize all that and always keep things like hopefully balanced, you know. And I appreciate her being out here. I appreciate everybody out here. It just seems like a very difficult job to do on some level, you know, to be able to negotiate everything that's going on. How do you deal with the stress?
Well, you get to a point where it is always changing, and it can be difficult and overwhelming at first, but you get to a point where you kind of, like you said, like you understand the industry on a certain level better than probably your client does. So you're better able to let them know, oh, there's this whole other side of the deal that they're missing out on, or they're losing not only money, but like all these other perks that they could get. And you learn that there are certain bounds and like rules within the industry of certain things that like you can do and you can't do. And so it's really just a learning curve. But when you get to that point and you kind of understand things, there's always like more to learn and more to do. But it kind of all just naturally comes, and you feel more confident knowing the different standards, and you can better negotiate for your client just based on your knowledge.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So there was a question Neil asked in the chat. So for somebody that doesn't have any experience in the entertainment industry, but wants to become an entertainment lawyer, what kind of advice would you give in that scenario?
I would say reach out, especially as a student, because people love to talk to students. Just literally reach out to anybody in the industry. They'd be probably happy to talk to. It's always good to like look people up that, you know, there's like I mentioned earlier, there's always those Hollywood top 100 lists or whatever of like power lawyers or power agents or whoever. And if you're able to, it's always better if you can like find some sort of connection. So they're like, oh, this person like went to the same school as me, or they have the same hobbies or interests as me. So they're, you know, it's like your little in. But people are usually really willing to talk to students. And I think that number one, that really helps you get a better sense of the world and the industry and, you know, what you're maybe walking into. And then number two, you have FaceTime with these people that maybe will get you a job in the future. Maybe you'll run into, it's a pretty small community, you find out. And like I've even had situations where I'll be on a an email or a call with a lawyer that I remember as a law student, like having an info interview with them, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I don't know if you remember me, but like you talked to me like so many years ago. It's so nice to see you. And they'll either like remember or not, and then they'll just be like, you know, like excited and happy. So it's just like gradually getting those connections is the best way to go about it, I would say, because the entertainment industry is really just about who you know, which can be a good thing. It's mostly a good thing, but so that's probably the biggest challenge. But really, like, I don't even know if I did enough when I was in law school. Like, just call, email, do as much as you can, because that's really how you get your foot in the door, is by, you know, having these conversations with different people.
Okay, so we have a little less than 5 minutes. We're going to take, is it Kadisha and then James, and then also Mandi. There were several requests in the chat. If you can name, if you remember, the books that you said that you had read that kind of helped you, you know, refocus your interest in entertainment.
There's one called, it's called literally just like the TV business or the TV industry, I think, which is really good. There's a book called, shoot, I like have them all here. Maybe, do you ever do something where you send out something to people afterwards? I could like put together like a good list maybe, but.
You can send it to me. If somebody, you can send it to me, and if somebody wants to know it, then I will put my email address in the chat, and then I will forward Mandi's book list.
Perfect.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's go Kadisha.
Hi, Mandi. Thanks for your time today.
Yeah, of course.
So I currently work in public relations, and I see myself as a creative individual, but I'm really interested in a legal career. And I've actually envisioned myself maybe producing like a commercial in the future, or writing for a TV show, things along that line of a creative opportunity. So I'm just wondering, in the legal sphere, is there enough time necessarily to fulfill both creative and legal passions?
I would say I'm also a very creative person too, so I appreciate that. And I would say that it can be challenging, but there's always, like, you always make time for the things that you love to do. I do know certain lawyers who they're always like working on that screenplay, or there's even like, I can't remember off the top of my head his name, but it's a Morris Yorn attorney, I think, literally published a book a couple years ago that he had been working on forever. So I think a lot of entertainment attorneys actually get into this space because they either, you know, have always been creative, or they grew up creative, or they were always drawn by some creative vein. And so they keep that going a lot of times. And it turns into either, you know, who knows, maybe eventually like you'll sell a screenplay and then you'll end up being a writer. Or it's just like a really fun thing that you get to do on the side as like a hobby.
Thank you.
Okay, and our last question is going to be James.
I'm leaving.
Okay, hey, how you doing? Thanks for taking the question here. Mandi, thanks for being on the call. I got a question about the role of intellectual property in what you do. And then is there a particular field of specialization that you might recommend? Litigation versus any type of other thing, or is there just a broad spectrum that entertainment law covers? And then Lisa, for you, follow up, the application period, is that still going? Is there a distance program? Do you have a hybrid element? And then is there a part-time element as well?
Gosh, okay, I'm going to answer first, if that's all right with Mandi. The application is still available. We are still accepting applications for all 4 programs. So the scale program that Mandi was part of, the traditional 3-year program, and the 2 part-time programs that are 4 years each. The scale program for this particular first period will be remote, but that is not typical. This is really just still a carryover from, you know, the situation that we're dealing with COVID. All of our programs are considered to be in person on a normal basis, with the one caveat that our evening program does have a little bit more, I guess, if you want to call it, of a hybrid schedule, where it's a 4-night program, but only 2 nights you're required to come to campus. So I'm referring to a pre-COVID world and an eventual post-COVID world. It's 2 nights on campus, and then the 3rd and or 4th night, depending upon where you are in your year program, you would either do something synchronous, which is a lot like this, where you're with your classmates online at the same time, or something we call asynchronous, which is, you know, watching a video or doing an assignment on your own. So I think I covered all of that. So Mandi, going back to your portion of the question.
Yeah, so just with respect to intellectual property. So everything in entertainment is related to intellectual property, but the biggest area that comes into play, just work-wise, is with respect to clearance. And clearance is just like this overarching term that means the lawyers that go in and review a film or TV show or whatever, and they look at what's in the background. If you're using any third-party materials that aren't original to the show, so that means photos, other video clips that you were taking off of somewhere else, quotes. That could even mean like if you're basing your material off of like a book or a play, anything pre-existing. And so clearance really goes through and they break down, it's copyright, trademark, and also has to deal with like personal rights. So if it's based on somebody's real story, you'll have a lawyer come in and review the whole thing and say, oh, these are the bounds of you can do X, Y, and Z, but you can't do these things because it infringes on their privacy rights or publicity rights or, things of that nature. So that's really like a clearance attorney. And those people actually a lot of times will be litigators. It depends. There's some transactional clearance attorneys, and then there are a lot of litigators will do clearance work as well, because those are probably the biggest issues that come into play that eventually lead to litigation. And then I guess just in terms of like which avenue to choose, I think it's really a personality thing. Like some people like love litigation. For me, it's just like, I don't know, it doesn't interest me as much. And I kind of like prefer the transactional work, but I think you get a good sense of that probably in law school too, because you'll get to see what it means to be a litigator versus a transactional attorney.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you. So if I can just indulge Mandi for 2 more minutes here, is there anything that you would like to share with these prospective students? Anything maybe you wish you had told yourself prior to starting off in law school? Any last tip of how they can not only make the most of their experience, but also approach it with the correct mind space?
Mm-hmm. I would say probably just be patient, and if you work hard, like good things will come to you, both in terms of like grades and your career. It always seems really daunting when you're in the moment of studying and everything's so overwhelming, but if you kind of can just like see through it and be like, okay, I'm focused, I'm working hard, I'm gonna be fine, then you will make it through and you'll be okay. That's what I wish I would have told myself. And then just be open to any opportunity, be open to being friends and collaborating and studying with your fellow, student people, and go to the events and meet all the people and just do as much as you can, because it really it's a limited time. It really is. And so you want to like kind of soak it up and take as much as you can before you're actually in the work world, and you might not get as many opportunities as you otherwise would have as a student.
Those are fantastic remarks to end on. So I'd like to have everybody join me in thanking Mandi for spending, this evening with us. We can tell she's obviously a very busy person, so this is really precious time. And we hope that, you all were able to glean a little bit of what it's like to be an entertainment lawyer, what it's like to come to law school with your mind set on something and realize that that is still the goal, and all the things that kind of happen along the way to kind of help reinforce all of those decisions. So thank you to everyone for joining. I hope you found the program to be informative. I'm going to put my email in the chat again. So if you'd like to reach out to me, if you want any of that information from Mandi regarding the books, you can let me know. And once I get it from Mandi, I will about that. And with that, we will say goodnight, and everyone take care and be safe.